Sure.
Before you know what's going on. That was balance. I think it's making a lot of push to go too far.
I have no skin in my game, but other than another one doesn't know. I don't want to have any accurate information. And then
So please feel free to mill about. This is a very casual engagement. My name is Becca, and I'm the Arts and Culture Coordinator for Green Heights. Before we even start, I would like to thank Whole Healthcare for supporting the speaker series In the Know. And tonight we have a wonderful panel. We have here with us Emily Murphy from SAS. We have our own Tracy Tucker, and we have Dr. Wendy McLaughlin. So it should be a fabulous thing. I want you to chime in. We're not going to do Q&A at the end because you lose the thread. So if we're on there or talk about it, feel free to interject. Before we start, I think just to help the presenters, it might be a good idea if we can get an idea of the age range of your children so we know where we're directing this. So I'm gonna break it down. If you have elementary school age children, raise your hand. If you have middle school, let's break that down a little bit more. Let's say if you have a 6th grade child, raise your hand. Okay, if you have a 7th grade. Nice. And let's move on to 8th. That gives you a little idea of where we're at? Okay, and just so we don't exclude, who has high schoolers? Very good, thank you. I'm going to start very, very basic and rudimentary, and then we're going to look at the big picture and then narrow it down. So here we go. Enjoy the ride. Hope it's not scary. And so I am going to throw questions out. If something moves you, strike it. We'll take turns, and it'll just be very conversational and casual. So I'm going to ask the first question, and this is not directed at anybody specifically, but I would like to say, what age should I start to talk to my child about his or her sexuality? At least nobody went like this.
I think in my opinion, there's sort of a golden rule in regards to communication to your kids, and I think that things obviously developmentally. I think the sooner the better, and I think one of the things you're going to hear from me all night tonight is about normalizing, because the more you communicate about it and the more you normalize the topic, it's easier. Even when they transition into that very awkward time period of being an adolescent, it's still, if it's normal and they feel like it's normal, I think that it makes it easier. But
let me just give an example. I just gave talks to Portsmouth Middle School, 2 yesterday, 2 today. So if any of you have 8th graders who came home traumatized, you can blame me. But what literally we do is we talk to them all about diseases. I'm a gynecologist in Rye, and so the diseases that I'm seeing as a result of sexual activity of our children. And so the stories that we tell are all stories about Portsmouth, Stratham, Exeter, Newcastle, just our kids. Good kids. We have good kids. These kids just sometimes aren't making the best decisions. And sometimes it's because they don't have the knowledge, and that's where we as the adults need to come in and give them accurate knowledge. And sometimes they're just making really stupid decisions because their emotions get in the way. But the normalizing, it's fascinating that I give this talk with another woman, and I very openly start by saying, you know, here are the diseases I want to talk about, and I talk about HPV and I talk about herpes in particular because I see so much of it in my office. I say HPV is spread skin to skin, and it's a normal virus that lives on the penis and lives in the vagina, and they all go like this, right? They're like mortified. By the fifth time I've said the word penis and vagina, they are so they're not listening to what I'm really saying. And I think that's what you're saying, Tracy, is we have to use the accurate words. Talk to them in an adult, they're asking you adult questions, and respond in an adult appropriate way. And I think the more that we desensitize ourselves to it, the more open and honest we are, the more approachable we are.
And I totally agree with that, using correct biological terms, because I go into schools and I do sexual violence and violence prevention, and it's funny, you know, I'll be like in 7th grade, and the kids will throw around words like, you know, oh, that's slutty, or these kind of words, and then the word penis is considered a bad word. You know, I'm like, no, penis, vagina, breast, those are not bad words. But, you know, slutty, you know, skanky, you know, bitch, those are the words they feel more comfortable saying than they do actually saying correct biological terms. So I think there is a lot of power in, yeah, because penis is not a dirty word, you know.
Yeah. And that brings me to, should we differentiate this normalizing or talking to our kids, whether they're a boy or a girl? When you broach the subject and you start asking questions of your child, is it different the way you talk to a boy or talk to a girl?
I would hope not, because I would hope that they would understand that it's pretty universal. I mean, I think that's, again, we get back to that normalizing concept that there are girls and there are boys, and each of your kids are going to know that, obviously, right? And so I don't think there should be any difference. I can't imagine there would be really any difference.
No, and I think we over-separate the genders and do a lot of that kind of binary language already in other ways. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if there are specific that I can't imagine. I would agree that you would.
What do I do if my normally conversational and extroverted child begins to withdraw from me conversationally? How do I keep those channels of conversation?
I think even if they don't seem like they're talking to you, you keep talking to them and tell them that you care about them. You don't want to push them, but you're here to talk. So I think even if it feels like they're not responding, at least if you're still saying it and making sure they know that you are a safe person to talk to, they're still going to hear that, even if they don't immediately open up. So I'm a big proponent of parents and adults in children's life letting them know that they're there to talk, even to the point where it might seem annoying, you know. So.
But how do I know when the time is right to do that? How do I?
I think it changes development. So I think the windows could change as kids grow up, and I think it's natural to know that developmentally adolescents are going to kind of go to this place of, you know, sort of closure in some ways, right? I think it's natural. It's not indicative of their relationship with you. I think it's just natural. But I think that there are different ways to relate to adolescents, and I think what we tend to do is, I don't want to say we as globally, but I think one thing that happens as parents of adolescents is that our kids are going through a tremendous growth process. And they're also learning a ton of stuff from kids as well. And so when they come out and they talk about, you know, school drama or things that are going on in our lives, I think it's very common as parents to have an automatic reaction to correct them, to criticize them, to give them guidance, to give them advice. And oftentimes, adolescents, the first thing that they don't want is criticism, advice, guidance. They just want to be able to say, this is what's going on. And it's hard because as adults, we go, hey, you're crazy. If something's going wrong and we want to help you, we can fix it. But they need to be able to learn how to fix it on their own. And I think kids will bring movies. Movies is a great thing. So when you're watching a movie with your kid and something comes up on the movie and it might be sexual in nature or whatever, what do you think about that? change the way that you talk to your kids, change the format and the time that you talk to your kids. Because in my opinion, very rarely do I get a kid in my private practice that, or a parent in my private practice that says, it's really great. I mean, I can actually just bring my kid in the living room and say, what are you thinking? I mean, give me, tell me what you're thinking. It's when the communication gap is happening. So how do we actually find those little openings to be able to, have that moment with our kids?
I also say just use not only movies, but anything you can find, the newspaper. Pull out if there's something happening on the news, whatever, so that you don't, I find that you don't want to say, gee, do you know anybody having oral sex in school? Tell me who it is. You're going to go, like, whoa, no, I'm not going to tell you that. But if instead you say, who's the, see, I lose track of who's who on the news. Who's the guy with the sexting? He had a picture of himself. He was the congressman. So I should have. Seriously, if you do something like that, say, oh my gosh, look at this adult. Why do you think he did that? How did that affect his life? And so you're getting the message across what you as their parent want to instill in them, but without being so in their face. You can even make it up. You can say, hey, well, this is actually a true story. In one of the middle schools, this might have been last year, a girl walked up to a 7th grade boy and said she would pay him $20 if she could give him a blowjob. So first of all, everybody goes, what? She's paying him. Yeah, but it's true. This is because, and so that's just one example. So you can make these up because believe me, no matter what you make up, it probably doesn't really happen. And say to your kids, if it's the daughter, wow, what would make somebody want to do? What was she thinking? Why would she do that? And isn't that sad? I mean, this is now me talking to me as the parent, but you need to say whatever is important to you and for your child to know. But I would say, isn't that sad that she thinks that that's how she's going to get attention? Or doesn't she understand how she should have a relationship with someone before she starts to be sexually active? Or if you have the boy in it, if you have a son. These girls are very aggressive these days, I've got to tell you. And you need to protect your sons and to say, hey, if somebody came up and said, with them ahead of time, because when these 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are in the heat of the moment, and they're not going to know what to do. But if you can rehearse like the play ahead of time, then they may think back to, oh my gosh, this is what I'm supposed to say. And it makes them feel safer. This boy actually looked at her and said, that is gross, and turned and walked away and went back and told his mother. And the good thing was she didn't flip out. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, what's her name? I'm calling her mother. That would have shut down communication. But rather it was, wow, how did you feel about that? That's sort of, I think, more, so use any scenario you can create, anything you find in the newspapers. That's real life. You kind of want to get them talking about what they would do.
You talked about normalization of communications. I have 2 children that are a year apart, and the younger one is much more immature than the older one. And do you normalize conversation by having conversations as a family sometimes around the dinner table? I was thinking that when you said that was something that came to mind, and I just wanted to know how appropriate that was. So that you're having that as a family, or sometimes you should be only having that with one individual. And I just, because I thought that might help normalize it.
Well, if the conversation came up at dinner time, have it at over steak. I mean, I'm all over that. If you can do that, great. Okay. I don't think that there's a problem with that. I mean, I think, again, it's kind of that, I think Whitney is right in the fact that if we're able to really ask our kids what their input is, what they think, and in a very stealth way, kind of give them what we think, but we're not telling them what we think, it really does make a huge difference, because we are kind of giving them that stealth message that we don't approve of that behavior and we think that behavior is really unhealthy, but we're really asking them to give us their input. Because I think the single greatest challenge that we can have as parents is the minute that we start to tell our kids that they're doing wrong, give them advice, correct them, criticize them. it completely shuts down communication.
I grew up in the 80s, and I feel like I have like a weird concept of sexuality because my school was really like, things were really loosey-goosey and things were kind of crazy early. And I don't even know what I think should be normal. And I have this daughter who's really strong and really, like I could see her being active early because she's just really confident, really comfortable with herself. And it makes me nervous. She's only 7 now, but I can like, see it. And so I'm like, I guess I have to figure out what my own opinions are.
Well, I think that's really true. I do.
No, we're all individuals. We're all different parents. When we give this talk, I mean, I'll tell you, there are some very religious people who are, I don't even know why my kid's at your talk, because she's going to be a virgin when she's married. Great. That is not, I mean, and then there are other people on the other end of the spectrum. In my opinion, it's our job to instill our children with our values and hope that they live up to that, knowing that they're going to fall short sometimes, and that's okay too. We all make mistakes. But in the stealth way, they sort of say, gee, you know, I'm not, whatever you want to say, your values need to be passed on to your children. And we're not all going to do it the same way.
I also think in your specific instance, and I think we had a talk last month about social media, and one of the things that I'm a big proponent of in social media is education, education, education. What I mean by that is education as a parent. So we need to kind of keep up with what's happening with social media. We won't be able to keep up as quick as the other kids are, but the more we can educate ourselves about social media, the better. I think we're going to be able to address the issues that happen surrounding social media. Sex is the same thing, I believe. I mean, I think it's really important to keep up with what is happening out in the current environment. And things have changed. I mean, Wendy and I were just talking about how Wendy was saying that things have changed drastically in the latter part of your career. And I'm sure that, Emily, you have seen things change drastically in your career. I mean, it is, I don't want to say sex is sex, but it's different in some ways because social media and technology has certainly made things a lot different. So I think education in that way is really important.
Well, I think, I guess a question on it, you mentioned movies, and I think the way things, and you mentioned this girl growing up, and I think a lot of it is about respect, you know, to respect yourself, respect the other person. So much I see in media makes it, you know, comedies, it could be a comedy PG-13, and sex in that kind of thing is so special and disrespectful. And it's a joke. So the kids go to school and well, it was kind of funny when we're sitting in the living room or whatever, and they go, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know how we get back to that, because I think they see so much of it at such a young age, and it's hard for me to figure out, you know, how you teach them. It's just respect yourself a little bit more, or respect the son, so respect the women, and if they come up and say something, the girl will say something to you. I mean, my son hasn't been like that drastic, but a girl said, tomorrow at school, come and grab my ass. You know, if you respect her, you wouldn't even think about doing something like that, right? She has to respect herself. And I guess that's where I am just wondering about all this stuff that's out there. It just seems so casual and not important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know.
To treat women disrespectfully in the media is funny.
And it's normalized. I think we're talking about normalization. It's completely normalized.
Yes,
Sex has been completely commodified, and it's adults who are sending that message, right? Because it's corporations, it's, you know, pornographers, you know, but kids have access to all this stuff. And so I think media literacy is incredibly useful, not just to help them critically think about media, but it also serves as a way to look at respect. Like you could almost use it as a vehicle for looking at other things in relationships, but it's a nice topic to do with kids, because they are so knowledgeable about media, and they can be very successful in a media literacy program. And you can have conversations with kids. Like I do media literacy with 7th through high school, and kids will talk about the fact that the stuff in the media bothers them. That like it's not like they're just like, I love it. A lot of kids are bothered by it. And I don't think they hear adults talking to other adults enough about how much it bothers them sometimes. I think stuff, as adults, we have really normalized the disrespect of women, the fact that sex is super casual. And so I think it's not just the conversations we have with kids, but our modeling about how we talk to each other. And, if you're in the grocery store and you see something inappropriate, bringing it up. And so I'm going to give you an example. I was working with some 8th graders at a school, and we were doing sexual assault awareness. And we do a story and talk about a girl getting raped, and we describe the outfit she's wearing. She's wearing a mini skirt and a tank top. And when we talk about who's at fault for the sexual assault, which was a rape, and she was in 8th grade, raped by a junior in high school, based on a true story, so many kids blame her. And they talk about, well, her skirt was really short, she wasn't dressed so slutty, she was dressed like a prostitute. And so, and these weren't like terrible, evil kids, they were just kids, right? And they're getting that message somewhere. And then I leave the school, I'm in the grocery store, and what do I see? Like a big display that says celebrating 50 years of beautiful, but this, right in my grocery store. And so, I saw this, and I'm like, no wonder why, somebody wants to dress this way, but what a confusing message. So I actually brought the magazine into school the next day and told them that I was in the grocery store and I saw this magazine, Celebrate 50 Years of Beautiful, and the boys started hitting each other, like, what magazine she's talking about? And I showed it to them and asked them what they thought about this. And we talked about how it's adults putting it out there. And, one kid said, well, that's different because it's supposed to be at the beach. And I was like, I was not at the beach. I was at the grocery store with my 3-year-old, And so the store is saying this is family friendly. And it really made them think. And I think we have to have conversations like that with kids that are uncomfortable, that would be weird. And I feel weird showing the magazine to a bunch of 8th graders, but I felt like I had to. And not just for the shock value. And it's weird. I felt weird, but it was right in my grocery store. I felt weird buying it too. I should tell them, this is for media literacy. It's not. So yeah, I think, and we have to talk about this stuff. And I kind of wished I maybe said something to the store manager, but I didn't, because I was more thinking about, my program in the school. But I do think we have to be more active as adults. If it's not just about the kids, and we can't feel like, oh, these kids must not have any respect. That's their problem. They're being taught that by us. When I say us, I mean adults. I don't mean you personally or me personally, but as adults. It's not kids making these decisions. It's not kids who are doing all this stuff and making these programs that are inappropriate for kids. It's adults. So I think we need to talk about that with kids.
What age, I can recall my daughter was younger, just introducing the concept of advertising, teaching them with advertisers, but the concept of exploiting them just seems like an evil component to me. So, but listening to you, it sounds like something that's a teachable moment. And really, when you think about that, it's so much of what's in media. They are exploitation. But thoughts on age and depth of that?
With really younger kids, I think you would just talk about the marketing, I was in the grocery store the other day, and I see Flintstones, that's here, Fruity Pebbles, and on the cover of Fruity Pebbles is a wrestler. And so I talked to the 7th graders about that, but you can talk to somebody much younger about that, and I talked to them, and they knew who it was, like, John Cena, they're all excited, they know who it is, and so I talked to them about what wrestling is, and even though it's fake, they're all very aware, it's still the whole, storyline is violence and talking smack and revenge, and people really do get hurt. And if you've ever seen some of the other stuff with wrestling, there's a lot of objectification of women in it too. And so, I talked to them about who is this marketed towards? I'm like, it's not marketing to you as 7th graders. It's not marketing, no, we can't eat it, but this is marketed to 1st and 2nd graders. So I don't see why you can't have that conversation even with a 1st grader. Like Like, let's think about, is this okay? You know, or like, and then it was funny, some other kids started saying, yeah, and actually I saw a 2-year-old with a backpack that, you know, a little backpack, not meant for a big kid, for a little kid, that was full of wrestlers. And so, you know, we talked about why would they do that? And the kids get it, it's about money, you know, and it is about money. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, you know, you don't want to set up corporations as evil or media as evil, but you also have to be, you know, honest. And kids are pretty bright, you know, and they understand this stuff. Yes. So I would say it's once your kids are talking, you know, you can talk about product placement at least, or you know, if there is a character being linked to something to a violent movie at McDonald's, you know, or something that is PG-13 and it's connected to something, you know, like a young cereal or something.
The media is such a conversational piece for middle schoolers specifically. How can I really let my child go to the movies with their friends and watch television when there is, you know, not necessarily promiscuous behavior, but they're acting older than themselves, and how can I let them be a part of pop culture and absorb this and not be affected by all it has to offer? I can't preview every single movie.
No, and we can't protect our kids from every single message they're going to see. And I mean, you know, just to kind of go back to the 80s reference, I mean, you know, we saw people like Madonna and we saw people like Prince, and, you know, I know for sure that there were significant sexual messages that were happening there have been since a really long time. I mean, think about Elvis. You know, back in, I mean, that was a big deal. I think fundamentally it comes down to understanding that the most important message that our kids get is from us as parents. And I do believe that if we continue to have a conversation with them about our message, then they will see all of that, but they will also know what is right from wrong, because they have to develop their own moral compass. I mean, that's part of being an adolescent, is developing your own moral compass, and they're going to make mistakes. And the good news about being an adolescent living at home with your parents is that when you know, in theory, when you make a mistake, you still have your parents to rely on. Some mistakes are more difficult than others, certainly, but we would hope that as they're developing their moral compass, that that's going to kind of lead their way. But I think, and I don't want to jump ahead, Becca, but I do think that there is a significant societal pressure in, you know, latter elementary school, middle school, high school, to be a girl and to be a boy. I just think that it's different, and I think that is a whole host of issues around what is kind of pushing our kids towards sort of that sexual promiscuity that I think happens, however you relate it. But I mean, I
think gender roles.
I just think that obviously, clearly, there's just different pressures that are happening for both genders in that role, in regards to sex.
When you see your upper elementary school age child with using a sexual gesture, even though they may not know what actually they're doing, or using a word that they heard from a peer or a sibling or a friend or something, how much information is too much information for, say, the 5th grader when they're making a gesture they don't really know about? You want to alert them to what it means without delving too deeply into subject matter. Like, I'm just thinking, like, if anybody, the 8th graders were shocked at first, but if anybody younger than that heard that, it might be such a dawning on them that their minds couldn't process it all. Do you know what I mean?
That's okay. They may not process it all.
And that's okay.
I think that there are two things. I think each kid is kind of different, and don't ever think you're going to sit down and have a bug talk with your kid and be done, okay? Because they will say to you, okay, no, that's not, okay? And you say, fine. Then you go back 3 or 4 weeks later, and you say, without saying, oh, we're going to pick up where we left off, you're going to, so it needs to be reiterated, because honestly, what they heard 6 months ago, and you may say the same thing today, they're going to understand it differently. Or all of a sudden, they will have heard the word blowjob in the hall, and now they'll get what you were talking about. So you just kind of, you just do what you feel is right, and your kid, you'll watch how they respond. And if they don't get it, that's okay. They may get it at another time. I remember with my kids, I sat down, and I'm a gynecologist, so I was with my son, and I was explaining the uterus, and the tubes and the ovaries, and then I had this penis down in the corner. I'm like, I don't even want to talk about this. This is not what I do. And he's like, I'm good. I'm like, oh, phew. But really, about 2 months later, we ended up talking more, and it was just, but it was interesting. He could sense my discomfort. And that's what I find is that one of my messages to try to get across to parents is, and I laugh about it, it was fine, and eventually we talked about it, and we're only human too. But the more you just sort of take a deep breath and just go on. I'll tell you this, yesterday, I think it was the talk you were in with, we were talking about the girl with the blowjobs, and one of the girls were talking, and I said, what are you saying? And one of the girls said, I wonder why she just didn't get a dildo. Okay, so now here I am. I've done this talk for 10 years, and I go, oh, okay. No, seriously, you have to, you never know what your kids are going to come up with. I had no idea they would even know what that is. And in fact, I bet most of them didn't. So you have to be very sort of professional, adult about it, and say, I said to everybody, okay, a dildo is also called a vibrator, and that's actually just a pretend plastic penis. And I still think that isn't it sad she felt she had to practice. I kept saying, why doesn't she feel like she can be in a relationship? And when she decides to become sexually active, we all were there once, and you share that experience with somebody who cares about you. And you may not get it right the first time, but that's okay. Why does this girl feel like she has to know how to perform an act outside of the context of a relationship? That's what bothers me so much about that story. So at any rate, I did answer the question about what a dildo and a vibrator is and if you can do that very matter-of-factly, they appreciate that. And you're saying to them, I am open to anything you'll ask. I had a patient, she brought her daughter in to see me in the office just to talk. And we were chit-chatting, and somehow it came up in the music, and I don't know a lot of their music, but it was something about a menage a trois. And I said to the daughter, I said, do you know what that is? And she said, I know I should, but I don't really. And I turned to the mother and I said, the mother turned, her ears straight and red I've ever seen. They were in the car together listening to the music. What a perfect time to just say, wow, is that really what I think I just heard? Geez, let me tell you what I think about that from what my perspective, and there you go with your values. Tell them how you feel about it. But we do have to be very matter of fact, but they will also tell you when enough's enough, and then just keep at it every so often, gently, without the club. Just, I'm always here. Let's talk about that again.
That leads me right to the next piece that says, what verbiage can I use to tell my child when is the right time without sounding like word clear?
Right time for what?
The right time for actual intimacy. Like, how can I talk about good and healthy relationships, like how you just said, learning together and that piece without falling so far outside their hip and casual conversation. Yeah, because that's what I was saying to you, that when you and Dee are together, there is a camaraderie between you and a casualness to your conversation in front of these 8th graders that it makes them relax.
Well, what we try to say to the kids, and it's not just about sex, but it's about any teenage behavior. We teach the kids, we say to the kids, we all have that intuition, our gut. And if you can listen to your gut and be true to your gut, no matter what the situation, Dee talks about shoplifting. If you're with a 5th grade friend and she wants to steal some chapstick, what does your gut tell you about that? And if your gut says get out of there, that's the right thing to do. And the emotional trauma that you see is when you're not true to yourself. And we tell the story of either 7th or an 8th grade boy. And just so that you know, the statistics are that approximately 53% of people in high school are still not sexually active. So even though we need to talk about it openly and frankly, the vast majority of people still are not sexually active. But still, in this particular 8th grade boys group, his friends were sexually active. And he was the only one who hadn't been. And so they started hounding him, teasing him. And what's the one thing an 8th grade boy doesn't want to be called? Gay, queer. Okay, what's the matter with you? You know, prove that you're not. And he couldn't take it anymore, so he said, fine. So he had sex with a girl. The next morning, he looked at himself in the mirror and thought, I can't believe that I let myself be talked into that. And he tried to commit suicide. He sold himself, and that's what we say to the kids. You've got to know who you are. And it doesn't matter. It's going to be right for all of them at different times. Maybe somebody is ready when they're 18. Maybe somebody's not ready till they're 38. That doesn't matter as much as do they know that this is a good, serious, open, honest relationship. And that's the other thing I think we need to talk to them about. You know, I talk about the STDs and I say herpes is really on the rise. And one of the things is before you share your body with somebody, you need to sit down and say to them, please tell me, what do you have a history of? I mean, those are my words. Kids aren't going to say that. But, you know, tell me, exposed to anything. And if you can't have that relationship, I mean, that talk, you probably shouldn't be having that relationship. And so it's more just teach them to follow their gut no matter what it is. If they're at a party and alcohol becomes involved, and they're like, uh-oh, you actually get kind of nauseous. You know what I mean? You know when your stomach knots up? And you got to teach your kids to trust that. And we say, make sure your kids have some kind of a code with you guys, that if they get in that situation where I have a patient and she's a great mother, her son was invited, this was I think junior year in high school, to a party. She called, the parents were going to be home. I mean, everything was as safe as it could be. For 5 minutes, she had to go out and pick up a younger kid and bring him back home. And in that 5 minutes, out comes the vodka, because it's odorless, it's clear, and her son went, oh my gosh, this is a good kid. He thinks he's in a safe party. His mom's checked it out. And all of a sudden, his guts. And so they had the code. And all of a sudden, she sees the code. She goes and grabs him. And he makes an excuse. That's why you play acted ahead of time. So she said, if you're this is what you say, allergic reaction. I don't know, make it up. But have something ready for him to say. So on the one hand, he wants to save face. You know what I mean? You don't expect your kid to lecture the other 30 kids at the party about the evils of alcohol. You want your kid to be safe. You want your kid to be able to follow their gut no matter what it is. And so make sure you have those sort of open conversations about what should our code be. Because you're a good kid, but you may end up in a situation you're not comfortable with.
And there's a ton of research behind scripting. So that's what we do with our kids, is we script, right? We give them scripts. If you give them scripts, they can use them. In the heat of moments, if they don't have scripts, they don't know what to say, right? And so then what typically happens is they don't say anything at all, and they get stuck there. And to that point, I think there is a ton of research around scripting, and it is very successful. Kids can, you know, besides the code, which I think is important, they do save face, and then they don't get socially isolated, right? Because you have a choice. You either do what's right for you, and the possibility of being socially isolated, or vice versa. So scripting is really an important thing to do with your kids, and I think it's great. I didn't mean to interrupt you, so I apologize.
I had another parent tell me, and I do it with my boys, is have the child text you, and then you call them demanding that they come home, and they can blame it on you.
Yeah,
because everybody's not
great.
in there.
Yeah.
And that's it. You've already worked that out.
See,
It's
that's
perfect.
it. And you know what? Your kids now feel safe. So that they're likely to go ahead and try different things, knowing you have their back. That's awesome.
So when you talk about scripting, you mean giving them the language, what they should use when they're in that situation?
Yes, and allowing them to come up with a script as well. So, say you're in this situation, what do you think would work? What have you seen other kids do where it would be innocuous? If you're at a party and people start, opening up the vodka bottle, what do you think would work? Oh, well, I think, if some kid did, said this, nobody would say anything about them.
Yeah.
And so allowing them to help with the script as well, because they know the social world.
Yeah.
So.
Because I started with, maybe I went to the so when you're at a party and someone's smoking pot or snorting cocaine, shooting heroin. Nobody else will shoot heroin. He's partying at high school. I said, your world is going to open it up. He's like, I don't know. Figure it out. I'm like, he goes, I'll go to the snack table.
But that's seriously, that sometimes they just have to move themselves away from the situation, get out of the situation. With the 8th graders in Rye, there is Skittles parties, which are these parties that the kids are invited to. It's also called farming. But the rule is that if you're going to go to the party, you have to take 3 pills out of your parents' medicine chest. And there's a punch bowl when you first get through the door, and you put the 3 pills in, and then you take 3 others. So I go to, no, seriously.
This is right.
This is happening all over the
telling the
seacoast.
story, it's actually.
But this is happening
But it's
all
happening
over the
all over.
seacoast. Absolutely.
So
Very
if you
common.
ask your kids what Skittles parties are or farming, they're gonna know. I'm telling you, they know this stuff. So because it's what it looks like Skittles. So of course I flip. I go from a medical point of view. Okay, you guys, you could be taking blood pressure medicine. You could be taking, Coumadin. You want a hemorrhage? I mean, I really freak them out. But so we say to kids, all right, you want to go to the party. We all want to go to parties. We're not saying you're supposed to be sitting at home. So you want to go to the party, but what would you do? And this one kid goes, I'd bring vitamins. And the kid next to him goes, you don't think we're going to notice Scooby-Doo? But that's what, what Tracy's saying, let them script it themselves. You sort of give them, what would you do? And they come up with very clever things. Yesterday, somebody said they bring Tic Tacs.
And I like the 8th grade girls who went, I go like this.
Yeah, right. The only other thing I wanted to add to going back to the idea of when's the right time to start having sex, I also think it's important for kids to know the law, and that's one of the things that we do at SAS is talk to kids about the age of consent in New Hampshire, what the legal age is, and that it's 16, and so when you're under 16, you legally can't give permission to somebody else to have sex with you, and sex includes oral sex. Very clear about that. Oral sex is part of sex. But it is. And of course, that doesn't mean kids are going to be like, thanks for the law, lady, I'll be following that. But there's some kids who don't know that, right? And that is important information to have. And also, we talk about why did they pick 16, Like, they didn't just throw some dartboards, darts at a dartboard and we're like, I'm 5 and land on 12. Like, there was reasoning behind it. And so we talk about power and, different things that happen when you're 16. And I tell them a story where somebody was with somebody much older. She was 14. He was a senior in high school. And there was a situation that happened that wasn't sexual, but it was a dangerous situation otherwise, where she was left on the side of the road without a ride, back in the day when there were no cell phones. And I asked them, well, how was he able to leave her in that dangerous situation? And they're like, oh, well, power. And it's like, well, yeah, so there is, he did have more power. He could drive, he had access to money, he could work. There is more power. And so if he could put her in that kind of situation, could he put her in a sexual situation that might be dangerous? And they get it. Because we also tell them that, it's, because some of them think it's maturity. That's why New Hampshire picked 16. We're like, no. If it was maturity, brain development, then you'd have to wait till close to 30, right? But I do think that is something else for them to know, and also to know that different states picked older ages, too. But I mean, the values, I think, is the more important thing, but I do think that is part of the conversation that kids, or that it's information kids should have. Yeah.
So, this is kind of for Wendy. So 47% of the high school kids are having sex, and hopefully all of them in good relationships. So we can talk to them, be open about, being protected and everything, but do you have advice as far as, how do you get into that? Like when your child's having a relationship, making sure that they're covering all that.
You mean, so making sure that they use condoms for STDs and birth control pills or something? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, do you know statistically are they doing that? Or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, The teenagers are really good about that compared to older people because, but at any rate, that's another story. You know, there again, I think that each kid is different. I have some mother-daughter relationships where they're very close to each other and they share a lot. And so then the mother will bring her in and say, my daughter's sexually active, you know, can you help us figure this out? There are other times when there's sort of some, you know, the mother's like trying to be more respectful and not necessarily ask, you know, exactly what you're doing, but will say to the daughter, I understand, you know, you've had this boyfriend for a while. You know, I want you to be as safe as possible. Let's talk about what safe means. And it's not just birth control, but the whole thing. How to feel that you have, you know, that you're not being victimized, how to feel that you're in an equal relationship. I mean, the entire context. And then they'll often say, and maybe you should go visit your doctor. Pediatricians are very comfortable doing birth control, obviously gynecologists, you know, just to have another perspective. So sometimes patients will bring their daughters into me just so I can have, sometimes when I say it, they hear it in a different way. So there again, there's not one right answer. I think it's more you have to know and open it up, say, I noticed that you're, oftentimes I'll have somebody come in and they've been with the same boyfriend for a year and I'll say, are you thinking about it? And they're like, no. Okay, that's awesome. Let's talk about, you know, and so I think you just have to keep sort of broaching it and saying, these are my concerns. How would you be safe in total? I mean, I get so concerned when I see girls letting themselves be victimized. That's too strong of a word, but you know, that the boys sort of have all the power and these girls just go along and they come in, you know, crying because they're not being treated well. And you sort of are like, whoa, is that a safe relationship? I mean, so I think you need to talk about all of it.
I don't actually have a teenager, but
Lucky you.
I'm wondering if there's any way in which if it goes against what you were hoping for your child, you know, and let's say, you know, this lady knows that her kid is forward and is maybe going to be, you know, a little more forward at an earlier age than you would expect that you're want. Like, or, you know what I mean? How do you, if they're 13, you're like, dang, we have condoms because something might happen with girls in 13, that's really encouraging.
I think we make a little bit of a cutoff. I do think that parents have to have a value system where they say, I actually don't think it's bad to say, as your parents, we would prefer you have sex. I think that's, absolutely.
Where your values, you have to bring your values to bear on your child. And I hope that you're a virgin when you get married. There is nothing wrong. Nobody's passing judgment here. It's just you need to instill in your kids, knowing that they may not be able to live up to exactly what your ideals are, but I think that that's important. We should guide our kids. We should not let society and the media and the pornography industry guide our kids. We should.
They're being exposed to so many things at a much younger age before they're able to really process it.
And that's our job, is to
13
help
versus
them
16,
Exactly.
tell them something along. And whether it's sex or anything, you know, it's just too young to figure it all out.
Absolutely, and I think it is important for parents to say, this is our thoughts, this is what our values and morals are, and this is what we want. I think in particular to those cases where there might be a delta between your value subset as a parent and their choices, I think that it becomes especially in regards to sex, I think it becomes, how do we keep you safe? And I think and Wendy and Emily pointed out something that I think is really important, that this whole concept of how we deal with our own feelings around sex as parents, which is really important. I think boys and girls need to know that sex in the healthiest way is an equal relationship. And so it's not just empowering your boy or your girl about being safe and making sure that you don't get STDs or any of that kind of stuff. but it's about understanding the equality of a relationship within the sexual context. And I think that is really a message that sometimes gets missed because, sometimes parents are really uncomfortable, telling their kiddos that, I hope you're a good equal lover. I mean, we're not going to say that to our kids. But I think in context, there's a way that we can give them that message that sex is healthy, it's a normal activity as we get older, and it's in intimate relationships within the context of a relationship. But that we let them understand that that is a true, that's important. Because I do think that there are inequities that happen in the relationships at younger ages, even older. We know that as adults now. And I think that's super important that we're able to tell our kids that.
I think they're responsible too. It's equality, and there's no responsibility when they're in a relationship with somebody else like that. Sexually.
On my level, we were talking about like kids are different and families are different. So I have like kind of two sets of kids. I have an older kid, and I have two younger kids. And my younger kids, I suspect, are going to be much more kind of rule followers. They're going to be the ones they see what's going on in the party. Their gut tells them like, this is dangerous. This is going to get me trouble. My older child is like it's a thrill seeker. And what that I could have done maybe differently to your point is help her understand that because I can't squash that and to some degree I wouldn't want to, but how to help her figure out how to make choices that, like if it's, instead of taking that thrill of trying those pills, something else that's where she gets that excitement and that challenge. To honor who she is, that's safer. That treats her, she's treating herself with respect, she's not in great danger in finding that. Just kind of, I think I wanted to share that to your point.
Something like an Outward Bound or some experience like that, where you're out, and you're still getting the thrill and but in a safe, controlled way. Absolutely.
And you're helping your body instead of hurting it, right? Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Like, look what my body can do.
Right. Yeah.
And I think sometimes it becomes the question of why. What is it that is, what are you feeling?
So you talked about the skittle party or the whatever, I don't remember the other term that you used, and you're talking about following your gut and giving them a way to attend the party, or what would you do, or whatever. How do you empower them to say, you know what, that's not me, or it's not important enough, that's too dangerous for me, that's, I guess that's the piece that I feel like is, there's the average
Right,
kid.
I bet actually almost 75% of kids that talk, that's what they say. I wouldn't bother to go.
So there is,
Absolutely.
because what I'm finding, I'm working part-time in the elementary school, and I'm finding that the kids, even at an elementary school level, they're dealing with just a lot of garbage that I didn't deal with, certainly until I was in middle school. The dramas, the queen bees, in first and kindergarten grades. And I'm trying to figure out a way that, or I guess it's comforting to know that there is still the kids that say, I'm sorry, that that it's not necessarily the good kids that are, is it the good kids that are doing the skittle parties and stuff like that? Or is it a combination?
Yes.
I guess that's the piece that do I want my kid who's following their moral compass to feel comfortable going to that party, or do I want them to feel that moral compass and say, I feel like there's this really, really tight rope that we're.
And it is, and I think that adolescents in particular, they'll vacillate, they're still trying to figure out who they are and what they really truly, that our moral compass is so preset, but theirs isn't. So one week they may want to go, one week they may not. If your kid is like, whoa, I'm not going to be comfortable with there, great, let's call Sally, Mary, and Betty and see if they want to have a sleepover instead. Awesome. So
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I also think, I mean, I look back, 10 plus years ago, I had a private practice out west, and I've said this a couple times, that the majority of my clients, adolescent clients that came in, really came from either they had organic issues like depression or anxiety, or they had family of origin issues. And some of them certainly had, social issues, but really the majority was kind of family of origin or, some organic mental health issue. I would say that the percentage of kids that come into my office out of, from a place of being socially isolated, because they kind of didn't pass the unwritten test of being a girl or didn't pass the unwritten test of being a boy, has increased dramatically. And I kind of referenced this beforehand. What I'm seeing a lot of are kids who, there is a ton of peer pressure out there, and as you're saying, it starts in elementary school. I mean, we're seeing that. I mean, we know we're seeing that. But I think there's always been bullies, there's always been peer pressure. We've always had that, but with social technology, what's happening is that when all of us were growing up, we might have had bully situations, but we'd go home and worst case scenario, we'd have a telephone and we'd talk to our best friend, but it would stop because we'd have some time off, right? But it doesn't stop for kids, because if it's not done in the actual school hours, it's continuing via text, it's continuing via Snapchat, it's continuing via Twitter, and so it's this constant feeling of being completely isolated. And I do think that there are pressures for girls and boys in certain respects, in a whole host of reasons, but sex being one of them. And I think it is difficult around that. And I think that the concept of scripting is, yeah, there are a ton of good kids that are going out and making bad choices. But I would say, to be honest with you, I think most kids are really all good. And they can't quite figure out what choices to make. And some of their choices really, give them worse baggage than others, right? So I think that it's really about giving our kids as much knowledge as possible, as much information as possible. And that's why scripting has been such a big thing, because they could be in the hallway of school and stuff start going down because somebody has weed in their locker and it's their best friend's friend, and they're sitting there with, a moral dilemma, right? And so how do they get out of that, right? How do they get out of those scenarios where they don't make a bad choice? And so I think that's about, I think that's kind of where we're going with that. I mean, I don't think it's about whether they should go to a party or shouldn't go to a party. I mean, great. If we have kids that don't go to parties, that's fine. But I agree that moral compass is still developing. So.
Something that stuck in my head that you said to me the other day when we were discussing this was that kids don't have a bag of tricks yet to problem solve. And so I think that scripting must take the place of that, because you have your experiences to draw upon, and you can give them words to use, and they can problem solve in a safe environment. And then when they're panicked, the right words can come out. That bag of tricks kind of thing stuck in my head.
There's a couple questions.
I'm glad you brought up the electronic tied into it. I have a 6-year-old girl, 6th grade girl, in junior high school. Look at the juniors.
I'm not that old.
Call that or something. And I find that the scripting also happens just on these cell phones and PDAs. They play all this stuff out, ahead of time. The skill parties, are they drinking or not? These electronics have allowed them all to just play these things out. And I think it's very, very important that we all recognize how much they work against everything. From my perspective, they're just absolutely hideous devices. There's nothing good about it. They allow drama to come home. They allow drama to go in the bedroom. They can't escape it. A lot of people where there's other with shy, it's very difficult for a 6th or 7th or 8th grader or 9th grader to ask for a blowjob or something. It's not on a text. I have found from my experience, it plays its way out electronically before it plays its way out in real life, face to face. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I know that these parents who have copied all the electronics. It's always been a rule, it's been a contract for my kids once they have them. That we read what they write. It only takes them about a day to forget that contract. And we just see it. We just see it. So I think it's really, we found it very, very important to talk to them, what would you do when it comes over to you on your phone? Because that's how it happens. That's how they sneak over at 1 in the morning and have sex in the house while you're still asleep. It's with their phones. Okay, now everyone's asleep. Careful, my neighbor's lights on. You see this playing out with these devices that we give them. That makes that really hard unless they have a device. So I have just found that we watch those devices extraordinarily carefully because they so quickly turn from something that we feel is safety or its ability to grab them from a party. And I would gladly leave that on the table and not give my kid a phone if it wasn't for the pressure that all their kids have. They're tough. It's a tough subject. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do another social media event in October 16th, so.
Because it's the underpinnings of every other conversation that we're having.
Amazing what they do with their phones.
Did you have a question? I did. How do we empower our girls to, she's in 4th grade, but just, we have a conversation all the time about dating. What is dating these days? Like, most women are like, nope, I have a boyfriend. Boyfriend? I don't know. Do you watch? And I'm like, I remember the good old fashioned things. You could go out on a date, and I might take you, I might take you, I might take you. There were no expectations. I wasn't a slut. I wasn't sleeping with each one of you. How do we get them back to some of that so they can have those experiences without being, oh, you did it this way, now you did it that way, and now your boyfriend is over here? Because I think they're missing some of those things. And they don't see it in TV shows. They don't need it.
I think there is a tremendous amount of, again, pressure that's happening at a level with girls and boys in different concepts, but the concept of dating has changed, and it's because I think Emily brought it up very well. I mean, the media has, and TV and all of that, has kind of changed that. And I think I kind of have two answers to that. In a perfect world, it would be great to be able to get your kid kind of back to that place where it was you date, and it's just for fun, and there's no issues, and there's no repercussions. And if that can happen, wonderful, if you can kind of give that message. And but I also kind of have a flip side to that, and I have, sometimes things are kind of like, peer pressure is kind of like a speeding train, and sometimes you can't prevent it. Like social media, it's happened. We can't stop it, right? So how do we give our kids the language and the differences, even just the education around just talking to them about that. But again, I think it kind of fundamentally goes back to, not always, but what do they think about it? And is it because all their other friends are, doing that? And some of it in elementary school is really innocuous. I mean, really, some of it still is, thank God, is really innocuous. But as we've seen, certainly at New Heights, we have definitely seen it. Kids that are mostly girls, I would say, that it's playing out mostly with 4th and 5th grade girls. The boys still are a little slower. They're kind of, they're kind of oblivious because they're not as engaged in the kind of underground communication that happens with girls. But I think that it's really about fundamentally asking them what they think about.
So I don't understand what you're seeing in the 4th and 5th grade girls.
I think we're starting to see stuff happen, communication-wise, trauma-wise, dating-wise. It's starting in the 4th and 5th grade. Some of it is because of cell phones and kids giving 4th and 5th graders cell phones. Some of it is, I think that drama is happening sooner and communication patterns are happening sooner. So that underground communication. What I mean by underground communication, guys, is that girls tend to have this, boys, they get angry at each other, they go out on the playground, smack each other, and then they're having lunch together, right? I mean, it's done. It's pretty quick. I mean, not always. I mean, I don't want to, stereotype by any means, but what we see with girls a lot is this underground communication. So, I'm not getting along with Wendy, so basically what I do then is I get all 5 of my friends to make sure that they don't like Wendy either. And then we socially isolate Wendy because I am not getting along with Wendy. And so now Wendy, who used to be part of all 6 of us, is out because I've had a fight with Wendy and now I've gotten all my friends to not like Wendy either. And so it happens so rapidly. You see this a lot. And so I think that dating aspect of it is girls kind of who likes who, and does that give them any kind of power in their school realm? And it is happening as early as 4th and 5th. We've talked to a lot of principals at elementary schools, and we're seeing that. But again, I think it's really about talking to them about what they think and how they feel, because I think there's a lot of girls out there that really have no desire to get involved, but all their friends are. They're just emulating adult behavior by behaving that way.
So that's going to lead me to, in my 6th grade girls groups that I lead at Portsmouth Middle School, every year after the first dance, the 6th grade girls come in and go, "Oh, that was horrible. I watched the behavior of the 8th graders, and all they did was grind on each other at the dances." And they're like, "What is that? Why are they doing that? How can I navigate as a parent? Do I tell them about what's going to happen? Do I wait till they come back horrified? How do I navigate this kind of burgeoning sexuality in their population in their school?"
Well, I mean, I think probably prepping them, like if you know for sure that there's gonna, let them know, like, some of the dancing, I don't know how you're gonna feel about. Yeah, I mean, I think, and depending on, and I haven't gone to these dances, so if they are really graphically, rubbing private areas against each other, I think it's to the point where it's weird that there would be adults there as chaperones watching this. And so to even say to the kids, you really can't do this, there's adults here. And that's a weird thing to have adults be watching. So I also think that depending on where these dances are, if it's really graphic and really uncomfortable and too overtly sexual, it's just not appropriate, like having a mix of adults and kids like that. I just don't think so. Kids should have to, hide that. There's a certain amount of adolescence where you are trying to hide certain things from your parents, and the fact that they would be like, "I'm fine doing this in front of an adult," that's a little problematic, So, yeah, so I would also look at that issue too. And again, I haven't been to these dances, but I've heard this stuff. I remember that a while back there was a big thing happening at a high school, and it puts adults in a weird situation.
Still is.
Yes.
In a circle.
Yeah.
They're not saying it's wrong person.
So I have a question going, or sort of a scenario going back to like the kids are exposed to things so much earlier. So my 13-year-old, like 6 months ago or so, she was ordering some things online, some clothes, and she said, Mom, I really want to get a pair of thong underwear. And I was like, what? I seriously don't think I knew what thong underwear was until I was in college, maybe, I don't know. But I just feel like they're in the stores, they're out for this age group, and I just was kind of, I did not know what to say. Seriously, like almost choked. So I was like, well, why?
Perfect.
What was
Exactly right. Why?
Why are you asking me for a pair of thong underwear? You know, where did you get that idea? And she said, well, I want to wear my yoga pants so I don't have panty lines. So I was like, okay. So I'm assuming that her friends are doing that and not having panty lines, and that's why. I don't know where else she would have gotten that from, because I don't wear thong underwear in my yoga pants. So I just don't know, like, how, I don't even feel like I am prepared to, like, I don't feel like I know what they're dealing with because it is so much younger and earlier. I don't feel prepared to prepare her because I really was just so blown away with your question, which is not even that huge of a deal, but it kind of is, because I was like, ugh. But I didn't even know what to do, so I did buy her one pair of thong underwear because I felt like, okay, if I make this a huge deal and say, no way to the thong, absolutely not, that's inappropriate for you, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I have no idea if that's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, but in that moment, I was like, all right, we'll get you one pair, and you can wear it with your yoga pants. And I just didn't make a huge deal of it, but I don't even, should I have made a huge deal of it? Is that, like, I don't know.
Have they come yet?
And I'm thinking to myself, why would you even want to wear it? Those are so
underwear.
Like,
They were out.
Very bad.
right.
Very
So, like,
bad.
good for you. But like, how do you
deal with it, like it's foundational undergarments?
That's kind of what I was.
Like, okay, thongs, spanks, whatever makes you feel good.
I think we got two pairs, and I was like,
sexualize it, then there you go.
but I don't know, is that the right thing to do, or was I supposed to make a big deal about it and be like, well, I don't think you're yet old enough to wear a thong underwear. Like, I don't even really, I think I was just so taken aback, and I didn't really know what to do, and I still don't know if I did the right thing.
But I think what I would say, first of all, is I think it's great that she actually asked you about something like that. I think that means you've set a foundation where she will come and ask you. She was sort of asking you your opinion.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a really, so the first thing I would say is, gee, why? And then I'd say, let's talk about it. This is really cool. What do you think? You know what I mean? And sort of engage her. I think that it's awesome she came to you and didn't just ask a friend to order it for her online and stick it in the back door. So, and then we all make our own different decisions. There is not a right or wrong to that. I mean, my first reaction, but that's because I'm a physician, I'm like, you know what? I am so excited you're doing yoga. That's You're eating fruit. You're so healthy.
But I completely agree with Wendy. The one thing I will say is that there is nothing wrong for parents to take a timeout in regards to decision making.
Okay, I need to think about that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Just saying, you know what, I actually don't know what I think about
I
that.
still don't really know what I think about it. Like, I'm still kind of like, well, if it's just for panty lines, like, who really cares? And if they're not uncomfortable to you, like, I don't wear them with my yoga pants. I don't care if I have panty lines. I think thongs are comfortable. So, like, that's, but I don't know if she was saying I want to wear them because I want to show off my butt to my boyfriend, then I would be like, no. or, you know, I would have had a different reaction. I think, but I still don't really know how I feel about
But then
that.
maybe I would, then that's when I would sort of do the pretend scenario, like, oh, okay, you don't want the panty liner, I get that. But you know why else some women wear thongs? Listen to what they do. They do it because they want to be whatever. And I'll be honest, I think that's pretty gross. I think that's really sad that those women wear thong underwear for that reason. And just let it go. So you have said you understand her needs, you're glad she came to talk to you, but at the same time, there's a line that you're trying to teach her, you know what? Hopefully you're not going to go that way with thong. because this is what I think about that.
Okay.
And there's no reason you couldn't have that conversation 2 weeks from now. You're doing the laundry and you're folding up the thongs and saying, no, seriously, just like you're saying a timeout. You know what? It's not a done deal. You can keep having these conversations. Say, geez, you know what? I just was thinking about these thongs. I can't believe I just saw this on TV. Make it up.
Yeah.
That, you know, this woman got blah, 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 blah. She got a reputation, and I would never want that to happen to you.
But like, how do we, without like hounding them over like what's going on at school, what's going on, what are your kids' friends doing, what are, you know, like how do we get that information other than like those kind? I don't even really know what they're going through because it's so much younger than when I went through it. You know, like where do parents get that information?
Inside information.
That's what I'm saying. Like how. Like we're not on the inside, we're not teenagers, so how are we going to get that information in order to prepare them for what they're currently dealing with?
I have a friend whose daughter is in 8th grade at the middle school, and this friend of mine tries to carpool.
I was just going to say.
And all the other kids will talk about stuff, even though her kid won't. So there's one way.
In the car, kids think of like a lead wall that's up between the front seat.
Like a limo driver.
They're just talking away.
I have to tell you, one of the things that drives me crazy, but this is me and my pet peeve, is when I see an adult driving with the kids in the car and the adult's on their cell phone. I'm thinking, you are missing an opportunity here.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
And
put
teaching
your
a very
cell
bad
phone
thing,
away.
by the way.
It's also going to be illegal as of next year, so you can't do that.
Is it really?
Yeah, it just passed today. It's going to be signed. 2015.
Have you asked her?
I mean, yeah, but
What's going on?
yeah,
What's going on in school drama?
I asked her that kind of stuff, but I don't know that I think she would tell me some stuff, but I don't know that I'm really getting like the dirt that I want. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting some, I'm getting little like glimpses of it, but like I don't think I'm getting the real goods, you know? Like I think she's pretty like my oldest is pretty like tries to be like really like so that I think she's a really angelic child. Like if I catch her doing anything that's less than angelic, she's horrified.
That's good. That's wicked good. That's, I couldn't have used a better, that's because that means that your opinion still counts. That she is still trying to please you and make sure that you approve of it. And that's good.
One of the things that I have found is too is that kids listen to you when you talk to other parents or when you talk to, you know, whether it be praising them, you know, like when you talk on the phone to your parents or your siblings or whatever and say, oh, I have to tell you, you know, almost like they're not in the room, like you forget, oh, Abby did this great thing, it was so cool when she did whatever. They're in tune to that, just like they're in tune to, oh, can you believe what they said on the news today? And it's amazing to me that they're like, you know, like, and I almost sometimes have done that intentionally so that they can hear me praise them about something because it means more to them than if you come out. I think it means more to my kids to hear me say it to somebody else than to say it to them directly. I mean, not that I don't do it directly, but when it means enough that you tell somebody else.
And certainly what we know is that the stronger self-esteem we can instill in our kids, the better decisions they're going to make. So you may not know every situation your kid is going to be involved in, because we don't. I don't. Even all the stories I hear, I certainly don't know everything. But if you can instill in them that sense of self-esteem, they're going to hopefully 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, make the right decision.
But even if you can't figure a way to talk about pop culture with them, if you can figure a way to share your feelings about it with them in the background.
Yeah. What are your push-ups?
I was just so interested in you saying that, they obviously, it matters to her still what her parents think and, you know, that sort of thing. I'm surprised, I really was thinking that that was just my kids being manipulative and not manipulative, working in situations so that they don't get in trouble, that they wouldn't want to necessarily admit something that wasn't perfectly angelic. Yes, they do know that I don't approve, but or they may think I may not approve or whatever, but I wasn't always convinced that that was always such a fantastic thing. So I'm just interested that you said that. That makes me feel a lot better. But
Well, I mean, I think we have to be realistic. I mean, you know, adolescents are probably going to lie. I mean, I think we should just put that out there. And every event that I've been at, if we followed our adolescent around school, where they did not know that we were following them around school, I guarantee you that we would all be horrified at one given time, at one given point in their behavior, because they're going to do things that we wish they didn't do. We can't monitor that all the time, right? But it goes back to, I think, what Mindy just said, is that if we can help them develop their own moral compass internally, 9 times out of 10, they're going to make the right decision. But are they going to make mistakes? Or are they going to be stupid? Or are they going to be mean to their best friend once in a while? Are they going to, I mean, there's all sorts of things. Are they going to swear in front of adults? Are they going to be disrespectful? Yeah, probably. I mean, maybe not. But I think, I think most kids that try to be respectful of their parents, even if it's kind of faking it till you make it, that's important to go away, right? That don't have that need to fake it till you make it, don't have that need to really care about it. That's that Siberia you never want, right? Because we don't want to lose that contact with our kids. We don't want them to lose that respect for us, because they might not agree with us and our moral values. Right? If we say we don't want you to have sex till 20, they don't. But at least they know. Like I still to this day, I'm 44 years old and I'll never use the F word or any swears in front of my mother. I just wouldn't even think about it, right? You just wouldn't, because I grew up in a household where you just didn't swear in front of your parents. I swear oftentimes like a sailor, but I would never swear in front of my mother. So I think that there are just some respect things that happen for kids that I think are important to maintain. So.
That I think my mom actively tried to do was to keep a straight face and to not let them see that you're uncomfortable. And I think the way you reacted with the thong is probably great and probably will instill your kid to keep talking to you, because if you freaked out or got the wrong idea, next time she's not going to bother, right? And so I think keeping an open mind will keep them talking.
So I'm like clicking the button, like, I don't believe I'm person. What I'm always doing, because I don't know, I just feel like I should. Like, I just didn't know what to do. It's such a tricky one. Tricky.
We have come very close to the end of our event, and I don't want to start on another subject matter per se, but if anybody has a last question that you'd like to ask a panelist, we'll take one more.
Are there any good, positive movies, TV shows, books, anything that?
One thing I was going to say is that there's this thing called Spark that some of you might be interested in. And it was this girl, Julia, in Maine when she was 14. She actually started a petition against 17 magazine because of airbrushing. That's what she really cared about. And the hypocrisy of, I haven't looked at 17 magazine in a long time, but I guess, the articles about girls love yourself, diversity's great, it's not just about what you look like. And then, that whole show don't tell, everything they showed was, it's all about what you look like, right? Let's airbrush these models into perfection. So she started a petition, got over 80,000 signatures, went down to New York City, and met with the editor-in-chief and presented them with all these signatures and got them to agree to stop airbrushing. And so she has continued with that kind of work, and again, it's called Spark. And I talk to the kids about her, because one of the things I say is, did she do more than some adults do about stuff that they care about? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, yeah. So yeah, I think it is really important to talk about kids who are making a difference, and adults who are making a difference, but definitely kids. And she was right in Maine, so it's right next door. And yeah, there are a lot of kids who are doing stuff, and so I think learning more about that and talking about that, with your kids or with other people and having them overhear, like, oh, my parent thinks that's really cool when kids, are really active and say something and do something. And I feel like, having those kind of role models helps neutralize some of the effects. You won't care so much about what your butt looks like in underwear if you're thinking more about, what can I do to change the world, so, yeah.
Is that spark.org or is it?
Let's see. Yeah, I just have it that it's Spark. Yep, Spark, S-P-A-R-K. And her name is Julia Bloom, B-L-U-H-M. So it has more information like that about activism. And she focuses a lot on the media because that's what really she cared about.
It's sparksummit.com.
Yeah.
Spark Summit.
There is also a sheet of resources on this subject matter on the table. I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. It was a wonderful conversation. I'd like to thank our panelists for coming as well. And I hope that you will sign in your email so that you know when the next one is going to be. And have a wonderful evening.
I came because